Welcome to Dungeon Punks. I am not Stu Pop. I am Fil Cieplak, and today we're going to be doing something a little bit different. We're going to be playing a game that actually I wrote called Midnighters. In this game, the characters are members of a guild known as the Midnighters, who are investigators, treasure hunters, and slayers of the dead in this kind of death-ridden, horror-esque, gothic-like setting known as the Riverwoods. And at the table today, we have...
Hey, it's me, Stu Pop. Not your Dungeon Master today, but always your podcast dad. And I am playing Bragi, the pickpocket.
I'm Leigh Aldridge, and today I will be playing Yelena, the Blight Doctor.
I'm Kirk Hamilton playing for once, and I am Tormund, the Grave Robber.
And I'm Mel Shim. I am Greta, aka Chopper, the Woodcutter.
Awesome. So... yeah, we can we'll dive right in, and as you know, things pop up, we can explore a little bit more with your characters and how they look. But for the time being, we'll just jump right in and begin. You race down the winding, mud-soaked road as the heavy rain of this evening storm beats down upon your moldy carriage. Cracks of thunder and flashes of lightning accent the groans of your coach as it strains from being pulled through the muck. You are Midnighters, investigators, treasure hunters, and slayers of the dead. You travel to Malagrove, the Lowhill Manor Estate. A contact from the Guild of Midnighters spent an unpleasant night at the estate's coach house, overwhelmed by a sudden sickness. The locals spoke of a recent string of afflictions that swept through the estate, which have since been treated by the estate's new doctor. A doctor that has suspiciously, according to local gossip, taken residence in the estate's manor house after the late lord's recent death. Visiting the doctor, the reclusive physician ensured the contact that their sickness would simply pass and treatment not necessary, but should make haste to leave the estate grounds. Although the estate is no site of antiquity, you have agreed to investigate the strange circumstances of these sicknesses. Should they prove to be anything other than ill fortune, you're to root them out. Who here has the highest agility or travel skill? Nope.
I have three agility.
So between the agility junkies, who has the highest travel? That's
I've got two.
Two. I think that also makes sense. So Greta, the woodcutter, I'm going to say that you're actually the one who's driving the coach.
Perfect.
The rest of you can either be in the coach interior or can be sitting next to Greta at the front.
I'm going to be in the interior because I would be useless riding shotgun. I'm the doctor. I need to stay dry. Keep my wits about me.
I'll ride shotgun.
You're riding shotgun?
Yeah.
How about you, Stu?
I'm sitting in the back, kind of scraping idly at the mold with a dagger and talking about how we really need to clean this cart. I mean, it just seems unsanitary.
For those riding up front, we'll start with Mel. Why don't you go ahead and just describe a little bit with what your character might look like?
Sure. So Greta is a woodcutter, as mentioned. I have here, robust, tall, and she is smoking an ornate pipe.
Nice.
Yeah.
How about you, Kirk?
Tormund is kind of a not super short, but not very tall, not wide. Surprisingly,
medium.
Yeah,
just medium.
Surprisingly medium. No, kind of wiry, but underneath the ratted clothes is like a surprisingly cut frame, like brawny frame.
He's wiry.
Yeah, he's wiry. Bald head, big bushy beard.
Nice. Okay. And in the carriage interior, we have Yelena and Bragi. Yelena, what do you look like?
I am quite tall, kind of gracefully built, bright green eyes, like kind of that glint in the light like a cat's. Long dark hair, although it's tucked back in the hood of my heavy cloak. Just unnaturally pale. Skin almost has like a kind of greenish tint to it in certain lights. Like just if you've ever seen somebody who's like sickly pale, that's what it is. But she's healthy. Wearing pointy high-laced boots, and I said I have a heavy cloak on, and a jeweled medallion.
Ooh, okay. Bragi?
Yeah, Bragi is tall, wiry. You would not say he looks graceful, but He's surprised. He is, but he just doesn't look it.
Gotcha.
He's got sharp eyes, kind of like that kind of brown eyes that are so brown they're almost black.
Hmm.
A very nicely groomed beard and a thick woolen cap that just kind of pulled down over his ears. And a thick coat pulled around him, too, as he sort of lounges in the back, idly scratching things into the side of the...
It's a bit cold out with the storm that you're currently driving through. So those riding up front, you're just kind of soaked, trying to do your best, but it's almost futile to try to keep dry. Maybe at certain points you sort of swap back and forth between the interior exterior, but Greta, you're the one who's navigating and driving the carriage. And as you do so, kind of trying your best to make out the forest path in front of you, a sudden flash of lightning illuminates the silhouette of a manor house upon a hill just ahead. Pressing forward, you spot the glow of lanterns in the darkness, guiding you to the estate grounds as they paint the evening fog a soft orange. Gripping the lanterns, you notice two locals in front of the neighboring coach house, bickering in the rain. As you drive your carriage up closer towards the estate grounds, you catch both Greta and Tormund. You kind of catch fragments of the conversation that they're having in the evening rain. You hear the two of them, two locals, a man and a woman, both in their 50s. The woman sort of has like a head wrap babushka like over, trying to keep warm in the rain, and the older gentleman, a fur hat with like a long, almost too long mustache past his chin that's just dripping in the rain, both holding their lanterns as they bicker. And you catch fragments of their discussion over the rainfall before they notice you pulling up with your coach. You hear the woman say, I know what I saw." The man kind of sniffles. "And I believe you, Olga. Why don't you come inside and you can spend the night. I promise you, once the storm passes, I'll look into it." And you pull your coach up towards the two of them, and they kind of turn towards your direction, noticing you. The older man takes a moment to break away from the argument and walks up to you as you pull up your carriage. He strokes his long mustache dripping with rainwater, and he addresses Greta. "Good evening. Are you lost, friend? It's quite the night for travel."
No, we were here to investigate, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So again, for clarification, you are here to investigate, but not necessarily on behest of the locals. So they are not like expecting you, for example.
No, we were sent by...
The guild.
Yeah, I mentioned that beside. We were sent by the guild.
You hear the older woman, Olga, kind of perk up and say, "Midnighters, maybe someone will take me seriously."
"What did you see?"
She begins to kind of reiterate, saying like, "Let me tell you what I saw." And then the old man interjects and he's like, "Please, Olga, let us get inside out of this rain and we can discuss it further." And the older man kind of points towards the coach house. And you notice that there's this kind of 2-story building with a stable attached to it, with kind of large barn doors that are ajar. And he kind of gestures towards the barn and says to both the two of you, "Why don't you pull your coach into the stable and make yourselves comfortable at the coach house? We can discuss things further." And he kind of gestures to Olga one more time. "Please, let us go indoors." And she kind of begrudgingly, kind of with her lantern, kind of holding her babushka down, sort of walks over towards the front.
"Don't worry, Olga. We've got you."
In the back of the carriage, you kind of hear pieces of the discussion, but you're still sort of in the interior of the carriage. It's kind of muffled. You hear mostly just the rainfall on the top of the carriage, but you have gleaned that you probably have arrived at the estate grounds at the least.
Sounds like we have at least one witness. Which
I
is good.
assume Greta doesn't need our help to park. Why don't we go inside?
I don't mind going back into the barn first. Then maybe there's an entrance from there. We get less wet.
So as maybe Greta's kind of like beginning to wheel the carriage around, the carriage doors open and the two of you exit, kind of under like the hood of...
Wait, let me stop first. Hold on, just hold on.
I'm
tuck and roll.
I am gonna hop over.
Yeah, yeah.
I want to follow them into the
Yeah, so
carriage
at the
house.
very least,
Yeah, if there's a point where like the carriage lines up with like an awning or something,
Yeah.
I will also leap.
because
I just roll my eyes and like, ugh, not again. I told you, let me stop first.
Bragi does not trust this dude. That's why I want to.
yeah, Bragi, you nimbly just kind of like hop out of the carriage and you follow the two locals into the interior of the coach house, while the three of you kind of wait to get your carriage into the stables. You notice there's a few other horses in here, but for the most part, there are no other carriages. You kind of have like a clear area to just pull your carriage in and kind of tie up your horses, do whatever you have to before you enter, following your comrade Bragi into the coach house. Inside the coach house, Bragi, you are kind of immediately bombarded by the smell of kind of yeast and hints of both smoke and a wet dog.
Yum.
I mean, I've been in the moldy carriage for hours. This is
Depending on your tastes, could be pleasant or at least an improvement.
it's 6 of one, half dozen of another.
Beyond that, you find a reasonably small but quaint interior illuminated by candles on the tables in the common room, and there's a couple hanging lanterns on the walls. You see ahead of you the two locals kind of make their way towards one of the tables in the common room, and he kind of gestures to a coat hanger near the front door and tells you to, make yourself comfortable and, dry off if necessary and join him at the table.
Yeah, I mean, I've only gotten as wet as you can get from like,
Yeah, you were like just moments in the
Yeah.
rain at most.
but I don't know. I want to feel cool. I'll hang up my coat which like reveals the like pistol and saber on my belt. Bragi just wants to look like cool and kind of intimidating.
Okay. Yeah, you stand not necessarily imposing, but you look formidable.
Yeah, just like a slight loom.
You notice that the older man also has a pistol kind of tucked into his belt, into kind of like a sash around. He's a bit robust in size. Also, older, maybe in his 50s, 60s, his mustache graying, and he takes off his fur cap, which is also reveals just like a short crop of graying hair. As they're kind of settling in, the remainder of you three wander into the coach house, also similarly bombarded by the smell of kind of wet animals and maybe tobacco smoke.
Elena just like makes a face.
Yeah. I think I'm going to sit at the table, put my feet up on the table, just start rolling a cigarette.
So as you enter into the common room to join Bragi, you are greeted kind of more formally by the older gentleman. He introduces himself as Boris. He mentions that he's the warden of the estate. And you notice he's kind of partially distracted as he's looking around the common room.
I want to follow his eye line around and kind of see if I can see if he's looking at anything in particular.
It looks
or
like
just
he's
nervous.
looking for someone.
Okay.
He's just kind of like looking around, and you hear him kind of mutter under his breath. He's like, "Where's that damn girl?" And then he kind of returns his gaze to the four of you and says, "So, Midnighters, are you expected to stay here long, or perhaps overnight?"
We do not know.
We'll be here as long as it takes.
And he stands up and says, "Well, in that case, get yourself settled in. I can answer any questions you might have in a moment." And then again, he kind of returns to the distracted demeanor. And then he kind of said a bit louder this time. He's like, "Where is that darn girl? A moment, please. I'll be right back." And he begins to kind of exit the common room as if he's looking for someone. And as he kind of opens the door back to the outside, there's kind of like a gust of wind that blows in as the storm is just starting to get slightly worse. And you almost see him slightly struggle a bit to kind of close the door back again. And you see his kind of lantern light disappear through the windows as he's heading towards the stables.
Is Olga in here?
Olga is still sitting at the table, kind of arms crossed as she's eyeing the four of you.
So, I take it you are the person that we heard from inside the carriage. You have a story to tell?
And she says, "Indeed I do. Hopefully to those who might actually listen to me and take my account seriously. And she kind of leans in towards the table and she says, as I was trying to tell Boris, I saw something. I saw it. The creature. I was getting ready for the night when I heard terrible squealing. I looked through my window into the pigsty and I saw it. A cloaked monster skulking in the shadows. So I grabbed my lantern, my holy pendant, and I chased it off into the darkness. And she then kind of withdraws back into her chair and kind of adds with a final stroke, but Boris will not do anything. Perhaps the Midnighters may investigate.
Indeed. You said it was cloaked?
And she kind of mimics, sort of trying to illustrate with gestures the kind of demeanor and shape of the creature. She kind of mimics the idea of something wearing a cloak, kind of skulking in the shadows. She lifts her hands up, mimicking this like sneaking like gesture.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Were any of the pigs harmed?
She nods her head. No, I scared it off.
Or perhaps it was just a lonely farmer.
And she kind of...
Yelena, like, gives you a look, like...
Shut your mouth.
Like,
she
ew.
crosses her arms and kind of reclines into her chair. And actually, now I'll say she actually kind of grabs one of the numerous, you notice, sort of like symbols and jewelry that she has adorned on her neck and kind of dangling from her headdress. And she kind of like palms this holy symbol and she says, "No, farmer, it was a vampire. I know it, no question. The doctor may have fooled the others, but I know his true self."
What doctor?
She turns to you and says, "He moved into the manor just after the late lord passed. Was with him in his last dying days. But strange that he has taken the residence in the manor, no?"
Did the Lord have no family
He had a wife. She passed.
before him?
Indeed.
How? How did either of them die?
You get this look on her face like she's kind of almost straining to recall, and she kind of almost confesses that she might not remember and says, "It was a while ago. I do not remember. I was a girl."
Oh.
When the wife passed.
Mm-hmm.
But the Lord passed recently.
Yes.
Okay.
And do we know how he passed?
Mysteriously.
Yeah.
From what she knows, she tells you that his health rapidly deteriorated, and he got sick and kind of just withered away.
Probably fever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Quote unquote, everything was fever at the time.
Madness.
As you're kind of questioning her about the doctor and the manor, there's a sudden boom from outside. A crack of lightning and thunder as the door swings open. The winds gush in, kind of blowing out the candles on the table, you feel even like a little bit of rain on your skin, and you hear a gunshot from outside.
I rush to the door.
You immediately stand up and run to the outside. You almost struggle trying to get through the door as the wind kind of blows against you. But you manage to get outside and you kind of look around quickly and you see Boris kind of not too far from the coach house near the stables. So if you can imagine, the coach house and the stables are like adjacent to each other. And from around the stables, you see him running towards you with a girl in hand. A girl maybe 11, 12 years old, kind of long blonde hair. And he's like almost kind of dragging her as he's running full speed towards you. And you notice he's holding a pistol in his hand, kind of almost maybe still smoking a little bit. And he rushes towards you, trying to get into the interior of the coach house. Do you stop him? Do you allow him to kind of pass you? Is there anything you do?
I kind of like usher them inside, close the door myself, but don't let them go further than the atrium or like the foyer or whatever you want to call it.
I think, I don't know, but probably everybody, but I would have also gotten up and gone at least near the door to see what's happening.
Yeah. So
Tormund was in the way.
So
but
for any of you who might have followed Tormund, at least you can look through the windows and you see a similar thing. You see Boris with this girl in hand. And as they draw closer to you, or like as you kind of are ushering them inside, you kind of hear the girl and can quite clearly see that she's like crying, and she's sort of like kind of putting up a bit of a fight, like kind of kicking and screaming, but he's like gripping her hand, trying to like pull her into the interior. And you hear her say something to the effect of like, Yakov's over there, my brother.
So just like for the listener to know that Phil has a giant D6 in front of him, and he just flipped it from the 6 it was on to a 5.
Yes, I was about to mention that.
And he has not told us what that means.
No, we have no idea.
Like a horror movie.
Wait, there's somebody else out there.
And then Boris, he kind of turns to you, trying to get inside, and he says, her brother Yakov, he's still in the shed next to the stables. I'm not sure what I saw, but I shot it and it ran off. Please, you must get him.
Okay, Bragi, Tormund, come with me.
Let's go.
I let out a deep sigh and put on my coat and follow her.
Back out into the rain.
Before we go, the girl, is she injured?
She does not look injured, no.
Okay, then I'm comfortable going.
She seems to
Greta,
be like...
stay
I'll
here.
see.
She's in distress. She's like crying, kind of puffy, red, but she does not appear to be injured.
See if you can get any
Okay.
more details from her.
Yeah.
Okay.
And guard them.
So the three of you go outside and you kind of venture towards the stables. And as you're getting closer, kind of over the kind of distant cracks of thunder, you can hear the horses in the stable kind of freaking out. I'm not entirely sure what the adjective for that sound would be, but they're like not neighing.
Screaming.
Whinnying.
Horses
Whinnying.
scream.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can, I guess you hear them screaming.
But they also kind of like
Yeah,
make the
yeah,
sound
yeah.
that you just made.
Yeah.
But you also hear the sound of a dog barking. And
Is that the direction that we're going?
yes.
Okay.
And as you're walking towards, you kind of turn around, you kind of get to the stables and kind of go behind the stables, and you notice that there's like another shed, very likely maybe like a storage shed, that kind of thing, just right adjacent to the stables. And you can hear the dog barking from behind the shed, and the doors to the shed are open, and you can see just kind of faintly through the darkness, you can see a body kind of like laid out in the shed.
Before we go in, I want to attempt to spot tracks or hidden threats.
Okay. So first roll of the game. Yeah, I will say give me a wits awareness roll. I think wits probably makes sense in the context of you're just looking for clues, you're looking for signs. So you roll 1 spirit die plus a number of action die.
I roll 2 spirit dice because I am keen-eyed,
Perfect.
and my attempts to spot tracks or hidden threats are considered blessed.
Okay.
So I roll 2 dice for wits and 4 for awareness because I'm 2-4.
No, so you just roll 2 spirit,
2 blessed and 2 spirit and 4 for awareness.
2 and 2.
Oh,
So
2
you're
and 2.
rolling 4 dice total.
Okay, gotcha.
So the attributes determines how many dice you roll.
Okay.
And then
And
the skill number determines like what you need to roll equal or under for each die to be considered a success.
Got it. So my spirit dice, I got a 9 and a 3.
Okay.
And
So
my others, I got a 6 and a 6.
okay, so how many successes did you get?
1.
Okay, just to kind of describe in a little bit of detail, and also maybe for the viewer or listeners rather, how this works. So by default, a skill roll requires 2 successes for a success. I actually tend to call the successes a hit. So basically you need like 3 hits for a success, just to kind of not be confused. If you roll at least 1 hit, you basically partially succeed.
Okay.
There's like a catch. If you roll nothing, you just fail at the roll. So you rolled at least 1 success or 1 hit, so you're partially successful, and you see indeed tracks in the mud. They're relatively fresh, but are quickly getting kind of washed away by the heavy, heavy rain. And as you study the tracks, you can't make heads or tails of what you're looking at.
Okay.
It kind of almost looks like something was just dragged. Like there's no visible footprints. It's almost something like just like was being like a body or something dragged up through the mud or some kind of large mass. And you see that this trail leads into the shed, and the doors are kind of broken open.
You said there's a body in there?
There is a body.
I would go forward and cautiously examine the body. There's just the body. There's nothing else in the shed.
No, you like, you have your senses on high alert. You notice no movement in the interior of the shed. You just see an assortment of kind of mundane tools and the body of a man in his early 20s. As you approach closer, and actually at this point, one of you, I'm going to say, probably has to have some sort of illumination on you to see.
I have a torch.
So we'll say that you have the torch. You're standing right next to Yelena, and you're kind of, as your torchlight enters into the shed and you can kind of see with more clarity, you see this man kind of laying on his back. So he's facing you, and he looks ghostly pale. In fact, he almost looks withered.
Oh.
You, as a physician, as a doctor, you notice that he's still kind of moving. He's still alive. But just like from your immediate doctor mind, you notice he's suffered major blood loss.
Okay. I would like to bend down and examine him further, see if there's actually anything I can do for him.
So you notice as you get closer a couple interesting things. Firstly, you notice beyond the fact that he's kind of pale and withered, he's clutching a box. Almost think of like it's maybe about the size of this rolling tray, and it looks almost like a, what would you call, those like ballerina boxes?
Like a music box?
Like a music box. You can't tell what's on the inside, but it's just like a box that would hinge open.
Kind of like carved in some way? Or
yeah.
Ornamented?
Yeah, it's pretty elaborately carved. You notice that there's a brass plate on the face, on one of the faces of the box, and it just says, kind of etched into the brass, Drusilla. He's clutching this box, and you notice he has puncture wounds on his neck.
The old lady, she may be right.
Well, this is happening. Actually, I wanted to go around to the back of the shed and see where that dog is.
Yeah. So you, Bragi, as you circle to the back of the shed, you notice that there is a hound kind of barking kind of into the darkness towards the tree line. So if you can imagine behind the shed, there's just like the forest.
Yeah.
And you just see the dog like barking madly into the woods ahead of you.
I'd like to see if I can see what he's barking at.
Yeah, go ahead and give me also an awareness roll. I would instinctively say wits as well, but if you have an alternative for an attribute, you can offer that.
I mean, I was either insight or wits makes sense to me.
Yeah, I'll allow you to do either or.
Would you consider the thing I'm looking for concealed? Because I have a lucky charm that makes it easy for me to spot things that are concealed.
Indeed.
So I just have this coin.
This is what the dog looks like.
Oh, he's a good boy.
Oh, so cute.
Phil has showed us a picture of a hunting hound. It has longish ears, kind of like
Floopy ears.
brown and
Tricolored, floppy-eared hound.
The
Think
goodest
like
boy.
Hound from Fox and the Hound.
Yeah.
Yes.
He's a bit older. He looks like he might be in his tens of years at this point. But yeah, he's kind of frantically barking. So go ahead and give me an insight awareness roll.
All right.
By the way, before you do roll, you don't necessarily have to do it this way, but I do find that the order of operations when you make your roll is after you make your roll, I would check for edge first. So like you make your roll, see if you gain edge, take a edge if appropriate, and then count successes.
Okay. What does easy mean?
Easy means the difficulty drops from 2 to 1. So in order to succeed on this roll, you only
I
need
just
one success.
Gotcha. And I just need to get a 3 or lower. Yeah.
2.
I got a success.
Perfect. So as you're looking through, like you're kind of standing next to the dog, you're trying to see where the dog's looking, you're sort of scanning the tree line in the darkness. You have only like the faint illumination of your friends behind you. So you're still kind of looking into the darkness. You can't make out too much. But as you're standing there looking, you actually hear something. And you hear what looks like, or what sounds like, you hear what sounds like voices, kind of like muttering. Almost like you try to make sense of what they're saying, but it's almost like a haphazard of various words kind of smashed together. Like almost think like something parroting. So it's nonsensical. It's just various words kind of smashed together. But as you listen closer, you become disturbed by what you're hearing because you quickly start realizing that the various words that you're hearing are like, no, help. And it's just like, you hear that they almost sound like people crying out in pain or in agony, and various voices kind of overlapping on top of each other. I would like you, well, not like you, but you gain 1 stress
Okay.
as you hear this, and then you see something. In the tree line, you see a large shape, something of like a hulking beast, and you just see momentarily the glitter of 2 eyes kind of glinting in the darkness, and you stand there kind of trying to make heads or tails of what you're seeing, and then suddenly there's a like crash and a crack and snapping of branches, and an elk just rushes out of the tree line, charging towards you, frantically agitated by something, and it almost tramples over you. I'd like you to make an athletics check. Probably agility makes sense as you just like try to dodge out of the way.
Oh, I was going to try and shoot it before it got to me.
I mean, I guess you could just
Get some meat while we're at it.
I guess you could just immediately draw your pistol. But yeah, I would say that's totally up to you.
That's what I think Broggy would do.
Okay. So you're standing there, you're just like trigger happy. You all of a sudden draw your pistol, quick draw, and you just fire off a round at the elk. Go ahead and make a ranged attack using agility. So same thing, you're basically rolling 3 action dice plus a spirit die, and the number you need to roll for each is 1 or less.
Okay. Do I have time to do a minor action to aim?
I'm going to say no.
Okay.
This is very like you just quick draw as you are barely making sense of what you see before it's too late.
Broggy's instinct is shoot first.
Yeah.
Questions later.
And as you're rolling from outside or from the inside, you can, the other 2 of you, you can hear just this like bugling sound, the trumpeting sound that
Elks are
make.
freaky, yeah.
And it's
Oh, yeah.
momentarily terrifying as you hear it just outside of the shed. And then a gunshot again.
I do start combat with 1 edge, so I can spend that to roll another dice.
Go ahead. Yeah.
That's no successes.
Okay.
You got a 2. You don't have a.
No, I have a 1.
He just has
Oh, okay.
1 in. I
Yeah.
guess you're more of a melee.
Yeah.
Okay, so you do fire off the round, but you miss. You just are unable to kind of line
Fire
your
and
shot up,
missed.
your shot off perfectly. And I'm gonna say, as a consequence to that, you get kind of trampled a little bit by you just kind of get knocked to the side,
Totally fair.
and you're gonna take a minor wound as you just get knocked to the ground by the elk, and then the rest
Don't
of
fuck with elk.
yeah. The rest of you see kind of coming from around to the front of the shed, you see and hear the elk kind of like running frantically through the road. And you notice it's like bleeding a little bit. You think maybe it got hit by a gunshot or something. Probably maybe Broggy hit it. And it eventually finds like a way out and it just runs off.
What in the holy saints is happening around here?
Yeah. Once the gunshot happens, is the shed that we're in just like no window, like completely?
Yeah, very likely.
Okay. Then I
Like a
run out and around to where Broggy was. and
You
what's
find-
happening out here?
Yeah, you find
Broad
Broggy.
question. Dog is okay, yes.
Dog is okay. You find
Dog is smart enough to get out of the way.
Yeah. Dog's already back at the house.
you find Broggy kind of laying in the mud, and you see a hound kind of like licking at him as you're just like
idly reaching. I'm like, good boy.
I go over and pet the dog and then help Broggy up.
good boy, and then you help him up.
Meanwhile, in the shed,
Yeah.
Meanwhile, yeah, in the shed, you are still standing or kind of kneeling over the body of this young man.
is there anything? Because I was hoping to get one or both of these guys to carry him back into the coach house. But is there anything I can do like immediately to triage him before?
You might be okay. You're a doctor. You would know this. He suffered major blood loss.
Okay.
You know that there's basically nothing you can do.
So I don't know how to do a blood transfusion.
You've heard of maybe like cutting edge science that is a possibility, but like you would need like to bring him to like a clinic basically.
Right,
That's nothing that you could really, you might be able to stop things from getting worse for a moment, like maybe if you give him some like fluids.
Or I used herbs and poultices.
Yeah, you might be able to like stop him from dying for the time being, but he is clinging to consciousness.
Okay, consciousness is one thing. Life is the other.
Yeah.
Okay, I would like to try and at least stop him from dying.
Yeah, okay. So go ahead and give me you can either just use your herbs if you want.
Might want to save
but
that
you
for
might want to
us.
save those. So instead, you can make a roll to try to stabilize him. That's going to be a learning roll and probably wits.
Yeah, wits is
So you're doing like a quick medicinal roll here, or not medicine, medicine roll to try to stabilize him for at least a moment. But you even if you succeed, you know that this is like a losing battle.
Right.
Unless you get him to like a clinic ASAP, he's probably going to die.
Well, there is a doctor in the manor house. He might have some tools, but we don't trust him.
So we'll see what you roll first.
I got 2
0.
successes, which are both exploding.
Okay.
So it's 2 and 1 more. 3 successes.
Not a complete triumph, but you are able to stabilize him.
Okay.
You kind of triage him, the funny thing though is like he's not actually bleeding.
Right. He's just lost blood.
He's just lost a lot of blood.
So examining the ground around him, there's no sign of blood or
There's
anything?
no sign of blood, and maybe some here and there, but like very small amounts. But you're able to stabilize him. I'm going to say with the amount of successes you got, you reckon he's got till sunrise before he dies.
Okay.
So he kind of clinging onto consciousness, you sort of do some really like, I don't know, harsh procedures just to like save his life. And from the pain and the loss of blood, he slowly loses consciousness completely. But before he does, he kind of shoves the box into your hands.
Okay.
And he says, "Find the doctor."
I am the doctor.
And then he loses consciousness.
Okay. So I'm going to take the box. I'm assuming I have some kind of medical bag with me with all my shit in it.
Yeah, so actually it's another thing I'm going to bring up, just a little rule here. On the bottom of your character sheet, you have a section called tools. However many empty boxes you have is basically how many tools you have on your person. There's no defined list of tools. At any moment, you can just check off one of the boxes and you'll be like, I have a crowbar.
Oh, I produce it. Okay.
I have a chopping axe, or I have a medical pouch or something. So Leigh, theoretically, you did pretty well, but you could have, when you were making that roll, you could have been like, I'm actually going to check off a box to like produce like a med kit type thing. And that what that does is it makes the roll easy.
Okay.
Whatever it is that you're doing. Once you define a tool, you then write it in the box next to it.
And then can you use that tool
Multiple times, but
Okay.
at that point now you like can only use that specific thing.
Right, of course.
Yeah. Cool. So so he is stabilized for the time being. He doesn't have too long, you reckon, as mentioned, probably until sunrise. And you are now holding this wooden box.
Okay. I'm going to put the box in my bag.
Cool.
Easier to carry. And Tormund, Bragi, what is happening? Are you okay? I need your help. You dead?
I'm still petting the dog.
I only wish I was dead.
He's fine. He just hurt his ego.
Okay, we need to carry this guy into the...
I got run over by an elk. I did not just hurt my ego. I think I may have broken a rib.
Okay, I can fix you if we go back into the... Somebody carry him. He's very delicate.
Yeah. Tormund, you're pretty strong,
Yeah,
right?
I'll carry him back in the
So
house.
he kind of like, I don't know what this carry is. It's not a fireman carry, but
The Superman clutching
Superman
the dead
carry?
Supergirl carry.
yeah. Yeah, you pick up the body
Support his head.
I cradle his head.
and you carry him back to the coach house. Inside, we're going to kind of cut to the interior of the coach house. Greta, you've been alone with Boris and Olga, and you have since learned that the girl's name is Emilia. And this whole time, she's been kind of trying to like escape. She's like, no, I need to go get my brother. And Boris is like, don't do anything rash. You stay here. Just, let them take care of it. They'll come back with your brother. Is there anything you would like to have asked or inquired about or done during this like maybe 5-minute period while your friends were away?
Well, it looks like Greta is not very sociable. So she tries to comfort Amelia, but is doing a poor job, patting her shoulder very awkwardly, but asking what happened and hopefully getting an answer.
Yeah.
Trying to be reassuring by saying, "Oh, don't worry, my friends are out there taking care of it. Just tell me what happened."
I guess you could mention that I'm a doctor.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's like, "Don't worry, one of my friends is a doctor out there. They'll take care of your brother." But yeah, I guess I'd just be asking.
Then there's a
her.
gunshot.
Yeah.
And then an elk screaming.
It's like, it's like, "Oh, don't worry, my friends are really, really strong." Yeah, just awkwardly being reassuring.
Yeah, you through her kind of distraught nature, you get kind of snippets of her kind of saying various things and kind of recounting fragments of what happened. But the thing she keeps kind of repeating over and over is the fact that like the monster got him, and she keeps saying like the monster came, the monster got him, and.
Can I ask, like, can you describe the monster?
Yeah. So she kind of tells you that she saw a hooded, like a cloaked monster, and she says that it moved quickly. It broke into the shed. She tells you another fragment that she was basically like with her brother, obviously, as this happened. She was just kind of cleaning up the stables and putting away tools. Her brother was there, and the fact that the monster broke in to get her brother, and one of the things she noticed is the creature, it had no face.
Ugh.
I mean, that's
Creepy.
a good detail to get, I guess. Can't be many creatures that don't have a face.
And yeah, and then she kind of goes back to like trying to pull out reassurance from you, like, is he gonna be okay? Is my brother okay?
Yes, little girl.
He's alive.
And we'll say that this is when the three of you kind of opening the door again. There's that like gust of wind from the storm as it just continues to rage on, and you see Tormund carrying a body. And you walk into the common room of the coach house. What do you do with the body?
Is this the room that we were in before, like sitting around the table?
Yeah.
Then I go and just not dump him on the table.
Yeah,
place
but
him gently on the table.
Gently place him on the table. And at that point, that's when like Amelia breaks away from your conversation and rushes over to the table and kind of like kneels next to the table, sort of inspecting her brother's body. And she kind of begins to cry as he looks like he's basically dying.
I let her. Okay.
He's not dead. He's not dead yet.
There,
But
little girl.
He's very injured. Greta, did you find out what happened to him?
Yes, there was a monster with no face.
No face.
No face. I don't know what that means.
Like,
But-
it had just a flashy face, or it was invisible.
Amelia, I know you've been traumatized.
Who hasn't?
He got
But-
run over by an elk.
Oh, so that's what that noise was. You did try to shoot it, right?
Of course.
That's why. Yeah, so Greta tells the rest of the group basically what Amelia said, that there was this monster with no face, and now I guess the brother. So now
He don't really want to say anything around the little girl, but she already saw the monster. So I point out on the body on his neck how he has puncture. Is it double puncture wounds, or is it just like a big chunk?
So
of
as
it?
you kind of now in, the well illuminated interior of the coach house, you
I can do a
examine
better
closely
examination.
and you kind of like flip his head from one side to the other. It's actually a couple puncture marks. It's not just like two on one side.
Okay.
It's sort of like completely around his neck.
Okay. Oh,
And there's
interesting.
multiple puncture wounds. I'll say
So like bite marks on both sides.
it kind of looks like that, yeah, but they're not. They don't like correlate to a bite, like a human bite,
Yeah.
like
yeah.
a bite. Like it's too big. The spacing of the puncture wounds are irregular. It doesn't look
Can I?
humanoid.
This is just a shot in the dark. Does it look like a hand?
Kind of, yeah.
with long fingernails.
Morbius.
Wait, is that a thing? Is that how you drinks blood?
Not in the comics, but in the Spider-Man cartoon.
Yeah.
It was like suckers on his
Oh,
hands.
yeah.
In the 90s cartoon, they weren't allowed to show vampires because they had this
Right.
wild list of regulations.
Yeah.
So he sucked plasma from his hands instead of drank blood.
Yeah, I remember now.
Okay, well, I'm looking at this, and you can point out that maybe it was a hand, and I'm like, maybe that lines up. So I have a medical journal. That's my personal item, and I am wondering if I can if this is something that I know something about, like anatomy. If I can do a check.
So I would say there's a couple ways you could go about this. One way is you could try to recall, comparatively recall to what you know about monsters and the undead and that kind of thing. Or you can just literally approach it from anatomical, biological perspective of
Where the bite marks
are, which just by first glance, without even making a roll, you immediately rule out that it wasn't bitten by a human mouth, for example. So if you want, you could cross-analyze with your medical journal, and just compare to what you know about various monsters and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I'd like to do that.
Okay, go ahead and make once again, learning wits, but it's going to be easy, so you just need one success.
Okay. So that's 4 or less?
Yeah, 4 or less on one die.
3 successes.
Okay, so you triumph, and you learn, I guess, 2 things. Firstly, you recollect, just kind of with your dealings of the dead and both undead, the general kind of concepts and mythology revolving around vampires doesn't exist.
Okay.
You don't necessarily know where this came from, probably folklore and things of that sort, but very often what people consider to be vampires are likely just your typical, at least in this setting,
Garden variety.
your typical revenants, your risen dead that have a particular kind of, what's the word I'm looking for?
Affinity?
Appetite for kind of flesh and blood. And you, in your experience with dealing, quote, vampires, kind of the myth of them biting and sucking, draining out the blood is also just not true. More often than not, what people consider vampires, they would just cut you open and then just drink the blood that way. They don't have suction teeth that can suck out the blood. They would probably just rip your throat and then start drinking it that way. So if this was, quote, a vampire, there wouldn't be just puncture marks. It would be more the throat would be completely ripped open or would have sustained other injuries that would align with kind of typical risen dead, at least in your experience.
So the conclusion that I'm getting from this is somebody's trying very hard to make it look like a vampire.
Yeah. Or it's just
we've encountered something new.
Yes.
Well, it has no face, right?
Yes.
It has no face, but also can bite, but maybe it is just
Well, it could be,
hand.
sucking things out of its fingers.
Yeah. Whatever, you're kind of getting fragments of kind of comprehension of the sucking, the no face, the footprints. A couple things are just, nothing so far is lining up with the notion of a human individual that is quote, draining people of their blood.
Right.
And the bite marks or puncture marks don't line up with a human mouth either. Whatever it is something you haven't encountered before.
I would relay that information and then ask the locals that are there, Amelia and Boris and I guess Olga. Does the name Drusilla mean anything to you?
Olga kind of energetically nods and said that she was the lady of the manor.
Oh, the
The box.
Her name...
the guy's wife.
Yeah. Her name, Drusilla Drakov.
Can we get Amelia to draw what the monster looks like? Would that be helpful?
Yeah, she could try. She's still kind of distressed, but if you kind of really try to sit her down and be
Give
like,
her some brandy.
Yeah. I do have a flask of liquor.
Speaking of drinking,
calm
I am
down.
going to drink my flask of liquor to recover my stress.
okay, fair enough. So once you drink, you basically have to just down the bottle.
Okay.
So once that, I can just take that and that's gone.
It's just I pull the cork out with my teeth and just swig some schnapps.
So when you say Lady of the Manor, do you mean Yakov and Amelia's mother?
No,
or
no,
the
it
guy
was
that died.
The guy that died. So she was the late lady.
Right,
Of
she was the one
manor.
that died when Olga was a
died?
child.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So she died a long time ago. She was
Did she?
betrothed to, well, not betrothed. She was married to the lord of the manor, who, if you ask,
Get his name.
Yeah, his name is Vladimir Drakov.
Yeah. Not suspicious at all. Just a regular name.
It's just a regular name. I don't know
Well, Dracula doesn't exist in this world, so
Yeah.
Sorry, Nosferatu.
As you're kind of debating and also talking to Amelia about how maybe she can like draw or illustrate the best of this creature, Boris, he kind of comes up to you, Yulia, and says,
Yelena.
Sorry, not Yulia. Yelena, and he kind of just like, we should move the body somewhere that isn't just like on a table.
Yes, do you have a...
And he says that
he's not dead yet.
he's like, I live upstairs. We can place the body in like the bed. I'm not sure. You'd mentioned that he's not dead yet, but I'm not.
I like take him aside so that
Yeah.
Amelia can't hear. Like, he will be dead before daybreak if something is not done. But I do not have this equipment or tools here.
He just kind of like insists, like, are you sure there's nothing you can do?
I have heard of a procedure. He has lost most of his blood.
Hmm.
It's very experimental to give someone else's blood into his body, but I don't know if I can do it with...
And yeah, he looks like, you know, kind of lost a little bit, and he's like, okay, well, we can place him upstairs.
If we can...
Do the best to kind
if
of...
he wakes, get him to drink,
Mhm.
but he needs to replace fluids.
He mentions, which you kind of already know, but he kind of reiterates, he says, you know, there is a doctor. He lives at the manor.
He might know.
He
might
had
have
recently treated a sickness that came through the estate. From my understanding, is an exceptional doctor. He might know more.
Perhaps we should go there.
But for now, I think it best to make him comfortable.
Yes.
So Boris begins to kind of like lift the body up as like, Greta, you're kind of like distracting Amelia by trying to get her focused on like the illustration. And you see Boris kind of like go up the stairs with Yakov's body.
Yeah. The other guidance I would give him would be like, if either he or Olga or Amelia can just kind of like drip water into his mouth to like try and rehydrate him. Not so much that he chokes on it while he's unconscious, but...
Okay. So
Cloth.
he
Yeah.
begins
Yes, exactly.
to...
I've seen that in movies.
Yeah.
So Boris kind of goes upstairs. He kind of disappears with the body. And the four of you are still kind of in the common room with Olga and Amelia. And Amelia's kind of distracted trying to like illustrate this thing. And I won't do... You know what? Maybe I'll do like a quick weird child's drawing,
Perfect.
basically.
Yes.
But while I do that...
I'd suggest that why don't we go talk to this doctor?
Yes, I think that might be...
A, to see if he can help. And 2, he seems suspicious.
Exactly.
But also, Boris is strong enough to carry a person up the stairs.
I mean, he's like a...
He's like an old dude.
Peasant
What?
between his
What?
50s.
She draws this.
Okay.
For the listener, it is a vaguely human-shaped thing with lots of squiggly lines all over it.
Yeah, it kind of like... I'm going to say that she's
not an artist.
She's not an artist, but she like is drawing, and then maybe there's like a few pieces of parchment, and that one she just like kind of scribbles it out and like rips it off, and she's like, that's not it. And
Does
then
a
like,
spirograph exist yet?
but yeah, ultimately
Think she might be having a stroke.
her final illustration looks vaguely like this, and it's just kind of nonsense. There's the sort of the cloak, but she kind of tries to describe more with her words than with her illustrations. Just be like, it had no face. There was nothing there, and she just kind of like squiggles, like no
maybe
mouth, no eyes.
She cannot understand what her eyes were seeing.
Yeah.
Can we get her to elaborate on no face? Like Bragi said earlier, like, is it just a flesh covered, or is it
Yeah. So she
like a darkness?
So
or
it
is
wasn't
it-
like it wasn't that it was like dark or like invisible. Like it had a body, a form, but it was like there was no eyes, no mouth. It was just kind of like
like a void, or
she has a hard time explaining. It's just like there was skin, there was flesh, but no eyes, no face, no mouth.
It might be something that's just so incomprehensible
Yeah.
that she can't describe it. It's like
And yeah, as you kind of
eldritch.
as you poke and prod more and more, she just like starts to kind of like it becomes increasingly confusing for her as she's trying to make sense of what she has seen.
Right.
And she just eventually shuts down.
Okay.
I do not want to say we leave these people with no protection, but we need to go to the manor and talk
Yeah.
to the doctor.
I call Olga. You might want to take a look at your, like when she shuts down, I get Olga to come in and see to her, I guess.
Yeah, she begins to kind of like console Amelia and then inquires to what you will do next.
I feel like 2 people should maybe go to the manor. 2 or 3 people and one
I was
person
going to say
like
we all
stay.
go. But
Yeah.
I don't know if the creature will be back
Yeah.
tonight.
The creature
I'm a
doesn't
little worried
seem
about
to-
the potential corpse upstairs.
Yeah.
And then as you're debating that, you hear like the sound of glass shattering from upstairs.
and Phil changing the box to a 4.
Okay, we run upstairs.
And you hear like yelling, the sound of Boris in distress.
Okay.
You all 4 run up quickly up the stairs. And as you're making your way through the common room up towards the stairs, the windows just fly open again as like a gust of storm blows in, kind of almost like knocking you off your feet temporarily as you kind of regain your balance and scurry up the stairs to his like living quarters. And you kind of wheel into the room and you see a window at the far end of like his bedroom. There's the bed with Yakov laying in it, and he's basically like halfway through the window. Boris, that is. Like he's like gripping onto the edge of the window frame. The shutters and the window itself is just broken open, and you see a limb, a tentacle, some sort of appendage like wrapped around his neck and body, like trying to pull him through the window, and he's like struggling to keep hold of the window, and you just see the life from his face, or the color from his face, like start to disappear. What do you do?
Hack at the tentacle.
Okay, so you rush forward. You're going to try to hack. Before you make that roll, what is everyone else doing?
Yeah, I pull my long sword and I also try to help that way. Maybe
Okay, so you
stab
both
it.
draw your weapons. You rush up towards the tentacle, the two of you.
If they're both hacking at the tentacle, I'll grab Boris by the arms or by like the lapel or however I can grab him and start to try to pull him in.
Okay.
I'm not really sure what I can do. I'm not strong, and I don't know what the fuck that is.
All right, well, we can say you're just like standing there trying to make sense of what you're seeing.
Yeah.
The two of you that are making attacks, go ahead and make brawn or agility, if that makes sense, rolls using melee.
Okay.
So get edge again.
Correct.
'cause it's combat. I'm just going to spend and get that extra
Get
dice.
extra die.
So yay, 2 plus.
You go to 0.
Good. So that's on my spirit dice.
You get
So
another
I get
edge.
another edge.
Yeah.
I'll reroll that. It's a 1, so that's 3 successes total.
Sweet. Okay, so that's going to be a hit. We'll resolve that once we see what.
Okay. So I have this guy and then 2 for melee, right?
Mhm.
Or is it 3?
So you're rolling,
for brawn? Okay.
3 plus the 1 die, and then you're just trying to get a 2 or less
Right,
for
right,
each
right.
die.
Okay.
So that's 2 successes and explode, so roll another die.
Is that your spirit die?
No, this one is.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so 2 successes. So that's just going to be 2 hits for both of you. So you both run up to the tentacle. And what weapon were you using, Bragi?
The saber.
The saber. So with blades in hand, you just hack, the two of you cooperatively at the limb or appendage. And like as you do so, sort of like a black Icarus fluid sprays out of the limb, kind of coating your hands in this like weird blood. And you hear this kind of ungodly screeching sound from outside of the coach house, like through the window. You can't really see anything. You just see the limb kind of like bending around actually, I'm going to say going upwards. So it's like probably on the roof, and the limb is kind of reaching in and trying to pull him out. And you do enough harm to the limb that you kind of like, I'm gonna say you don't cut it off completely, but you sever it almost like halfway through, and it kind of
It's like flopping
It
around.
flops around and it lets go of Boris, and it just kind of like uncoils and retreats outside. Sorry, Tormund, you were...
I was just grabbing him and pulling
you were
him.
pulling him. Yeah. So you have him by by his shirt, by his coat, and you pull him in. And as you pull him in, you notice he's also holding something as well. You reckon that he was probably just grabbing on anything he could to kind of gain purchase. And as he's like, the kind of color from his skin sort of fading away, he's quite pale. You notice in one of his hands, he's gripping a cloak. And he kind of, you pull him in and he drops onto the ground in the bedroom, and you hear kind of thumping on the coach house above, and then it kind of subsides. It kind of goes away. And you see Boris in a bit of a better state than Yakov, but he's kind of like gasping for breath, sort of like swaying between, life and death at the moment.
Do these windows have like storm shutters?
Yeah.
I'm going to close those and
Yeah.
lock them.
Yeah, you close them. They're a bit like busted up a bit. They look like they were forcefully open, but you managed to kind of like forcefully close them shut, and you lock them. And
Before we do anything else, we should go around to all the windows in this place.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
make sure they're battened up as much as possible, especially if we're going to leave.
yeah, and as you do so, like, because a bunch of the windows had just been like blown open recently.
Do they have a cellar or like underground type?
There's probably a
Yeah.
root
Something?
Yeah, very
cellar.
much.
Then
Yeah.
I suggest that we take them to the
There.
cellar
Yeah.
and
Okay.
lock them in or whatever.
All right.
I would not suggest that. That feels just like locking people into an inescapable room.
not lock them in. Like just suggest that they go into the cellar.
No, I mean, because there's only
Or-
one way out of a cellar. Like, at least if they're here, if something comes in one way, they can try and escape.
There
it
might be
another.
two ways. There might be an outdoor way
Yeah.
that you can lock, and then an indoor way. But I don't know. It depends. I think what we should do is should get this place buttoned up so
Yeah.
that they're safe. And I guess Boris isn't coming with us now. I was kind of hoping he would to make an introduction.
Yeah, you
but-
could try to get him with you. He doesn't look as bad as Yakov if you do another healing.
Weekend at Bernie's him. I can hold him up and hello.
But I guess that is a question moving forward, is if you want to either leave everyone here or if you want to take them with you, basically.
Well, we have our cart. How far is the
Yeah.
house? Is it like?
It's like an
Coach.
estate grounds. So
Yes,
like
it's-
you can get there on foot.
Maybe
You don't
Okay.
even
we
have.
should bring them.
Plus the unconscious.
Well, I mean, if the doctor
we can take them to
do
the doctor
anything-
instead of taking the doctor to them.
Yeah,
But
then we can.
if
But
the
there might
doctor's
be
an
danger.
eldritch-
Yeah.
I guess you could
Right.
take the coach if you wanted to like throw people into the coach and
Transport
transport that
everyone.
way. That's totally
We'll bring
do.
the dog too for
Yeah.
protection.
Yeah.
All right, so it's a family vacation.
Yeah.
Everyone's coming.
Everyone into the coach.
Okay.
Yeah. I might feel better about that than just leaving these.
Put the family,
defenseless.
the 2 6 and the family in the coach.
Yeah.
And then we all
Yeah.
either
Anyone that, looks strong enough to hold something, we give them a pitchfork or just whatever farm implements
Yeah,
they have.
Well,
totally.
he has a
Defend
gun. Boris has a gun.
Yeah,
You know
Boris
that.
has a gun. Yep.
Oh yeah, a pistol. Yeah.
He shot the whatever, or he shot at something.
As we're like leaving, I'm assuming there's a bar here, and just
Mhm.
get like Boris to get a shot of courage.
Yeah.
Revitalize a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay. You actually, so here's something that's interesting. As you rummage around the bar, you find like, you 100% would have expected there to be like either some ale or some kind of
Vodka.
kegs or whatever.
Yeah.
You find almost nothing, not even water. And as you're rummaging, that seems odd, but you do find like a stashed like vodka bottle,
Okay.
just somewhere like hidden underneath, like in a cupboard, like tucked away. And you
Yeah.
kind of surprised that you can't find anything quickly. And then
I'm gonna grab that.
you grab the vodka bottle. I'm going to say you give Boris like a swig to kind of like revitalize him a bit.
Yeah.
But on top of that, you have another
Nice.
flask.
Is the flask healing?
It reduces stress.
Okay, so you begin to escort Olga, Emilia, while a couple of you carry Yakov and also maybe help Boris, kind of give him a shoulder to lean on as you get everyone into the carriage. As you venture outside to make your way into the stables, again, the storm is just getting worse. At this point, you struggle to really see much ahead of you. And
I'm
there's
sure
this-
our horse isn't happy.
yeah, your horses are freaking out. And also you have the hound with you too,
Yeah.
which just kind of piles into the carriage. By the way, at some point along the way, as you're kind of making your way out of the stables, Emilia kind of like curls up next to the hound, sort of like comfort, whatever, and you hear her just kind of offhandedly says like, "That's a good Sebastian."
Oh,
And you catch the dog's name, which is Baz for short.
I'm glad that she has
Short for, yeah.
a comfort animal.
And so they kind of curl up in the corner of one of the carriages as I'm going to say, who is driving the carriage this time? Is it still going to be...
Yeah, I can drive.
Is anyone else riding shotgun?
I think we would all be outside at the very least.
Yeah.
Is it enough room for us to all ride shotgun?
Sure.
I mean, there's probably the top of the carriage.
Yeah.
I'm just saying. Yeah, I'm
Or,
saying
like,
I don't know if we'd all fit in.
runners.
If we'd all fit inside the carriage, then I'm riding shotgun regardless.
Okay.
but
I
don't know.
would be willing to make an exception and just say that you can all ride on the outside if you want. Maybe someone should be in the inside. I don't know.
I just don't know how much room's on the
Yeah.
I'll
outside
take
yet.
inside and keep an
Yeah.
eye on our patient.
Okay. So we'll say, Bragi, if you want to be on the outside with the two of them, you can be.
Want to be? Will be? Sure.
You have a gun.
Yeah.
Which I'm trying to reload in the rain because it only has one shot.
Oh no.
Well, we can probably hand wave that and say you did it in the house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When we were.
Cool. So you kind of looking over your shoulders constantly, you kind of get everyone into the carriage. You mount up Greta and Tormund, and you crack the whips and venture onto the road, and you can see very faintly, kind of occasionally illuminated by the flashes of lightning, you can see the manor house ahead of you, just kind of down the road, across like the creek, and then just slightly up the hill. And you begin navigating your way along the road through the storm, and here's a song from a band we like.
Probably not because.
But yeah, I don't know. I don't know what our ending is for.
Here's a mystery from a monster we like.
Here's
End of episode.
end of episode.
Thank you for subscribing to our Patreon. Hope you enjoyed this episode. For more on the crew of the Archipelago, please follow Dungeon Punks on all of our socials, and make sure to leave a review on your podcast app of choice. Dungeon Punks was produced by Kirk Hamilton for the Podcasts of Doom Network.